Coming up this week on the Markcast. Well, here we are. The day is finally here. Many years in the making. The XFL's training camp day has finally arrived. We are managing our smiles and cries as we are previewing XFL 2023 training camp.
I already figured them out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You already figured the street.
Yeah, well, it's all about smiles and cries.
Put the joint down, man.
Hold on. Smiles and cries. Smiles and cries. Smiles and cries, I hear you.
Yeah, you gotta control your smiles and cries. Because that's all you have. And nobody can take that away from you.
Big time show today. Always an honor when the commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Randy Ambrosie, stops by an XFL podcast. Who would have thought? Talking lots of things with Randy today. The CFL's American TV deal. What are the effects that the XFL and the USFL are having on Canadian players and staff? Their signings up there. Lots with the commissioner.
Yeah, you have to balance those interests. For the record, Reed, I love you like a brother, but I'll tell you, I disagree that this is a bad schedule. I think it's a very good schedule. Yeah. And you're always, and look, I'm not saying that to be defensive, but you're always going to have people who would look at the schedule, and everyone, including me, could see an improvement or two. But scheduling in pro sports is very complicated, and kind of enough said there.
And then full training camp previews for the Seattle Sea Dragons and the XFL Vegas Vipers. Matt Lyons and Sam Just stopping by. Lots of talk about previewing rosters, coaching staffs. What are we looking forward to here coming out of training camp in Arlington? And then the man who broke the news himself of the XFL's Vegas Vipers Cashman Field deal, Chris Maathuis, stopping by CBS Las Vegas. Some insider details here, terms of the XFL's deal. When was the deal with Cashman Field finally signed? Lots with Chris Maathuis.
The Gorman people called me one week and said, Chris, looks like we're done. We just got to sign the papers. Don't release the information yet because we haven't quite signed it, but I promised you I'd call you when we had a deal worked out. So they had the deal worked out over at Gorman. Well, the next thing I know, a week later, I call Brett and say, hey, Brett, looks like it's going to be Gorman. Wait a sec. They were just at my place yesterday, and looks like we're going to work out a deal. So I think they went back and forth and decided, you know what, we can't play at a high school.
And then the XFL this week announced the full broadcast teams for their slate of games here coming in 2023. We bring on Liam from the Transfer Portal CFB. Lots of insights from Liam. What do we think of the XFL broadcasters? Full analysis of all of the teams. Lots of news this week. Going to be a long one. I'm sorry in advance. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast here. Reed here. What do you know it? Randy Ambrosie, Commissioner of the CFL, making a second appearance here on the podcast. Who would have thought this crazy XFL podcast and being honored with the commissioner? Lots of good guests today. I am not going to preamble too much here. Make sure you like and subscribe. Don't forget, we have this awesome Spring League signed ball. You see now former president of football operations for the USFL, Brian Woods' embossed signature on there. But Brian Scott, friend of the show, presumably one of the starting quarterbacks for the XFL Vegas Vipers. If you like and subscribe, your chance to win that ball. We are rapidly approaching 2,500 subscribers. I think the XFL news, everything kicking off, getting everybody excited for that. On the show today, we are starting with the Commissioner Randy Ambrosie. When you get the Commissioner of the Canadian Football League, you got to start the show with that. I promise you guys, even if you're like, I don't know, I don't watch the CFL, I don't watch Canadian football, all these worlds are connected now. The USFL just ratified and they voted, everyone passed the CBA. They're paying players competitive, starting wages now. XFL, they're warring against each other, but then the Canadian Football League is in there as well. So really curious to get, Commissioner Ambrosie's thoughts about, coaching staffs, players going north of the border now that the XFL and the USFL exist. So I promise you guys, even if you're like, I don't care about the CFL, check out my interview with Randy. That is a good one. We will lead the show with that. Then full training camp previews. Really appreciate Matt Lyons coming back on. Sea Dragons. I think Matt and I live about 20 minutes apart, but we only see each other at XFL events and virtually for XFL podcasts. Really appreciate Matt and then Sam coming on. Matt is covering the Sea Lions for the XFL. Sam doing Vipers breakdown coverage, and we're also talking USFL stuff with Sam as well, just because his foot's kind of in both worlds there, and Sam talks with a lot of USFL players as well. Really appreciate that. Chris Maathuis coming on from CBS down in Las Vegas here. Like I said, some insider details about the Cashman Field stuff. And then really appreciate Liam coming on from the Transfer Portal CFB with the big XFL broadcast announcements. I am not a college football watcher avidly. We'll watch the University of Washington Huskies, for my wife, go Dogs. But I really appreciate Liam and kind of sharing his expertise that way. So 5 guests this week. Lots more CFL content coming out next week. I did all the CFL Media Day stuff this week. We're going to do Randy's interview today, kind of lead with that. And then I talked with Pinball, Ryan Dinwiddie, Craig Dickinson, Jeremy O'Day, Sean Burke, and Bob Dice with the Red Blacks. I think that's all going to be coming next week. Don't want it to be, it's kind of evergreen, but I don't want it to be too dated that way. I'm also talking with Victor Cui next week as well from the Edmonton Elks, trying to reschedule my Chris Jones interview that wasn't able to happen during the CFL Media Day. So lots of CFL stuff. It'll either all be next week or it'll be sparsed out over the next 2 weeks, but got our big training camp previews this week. Want to make sure we get into that. And then spotlight, of course, the commissioner of the CFL, Randy Ambrosie. Thank you guys so much. I'll check back in at the end of the show. Like and subscribe. Take care. Well, if you had been told during your tenure you would appear in an XFL podcast not once but twice, I'm sure that would be quite shocking to you. We have Commissioner Randy Ambrosie here. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm very well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Busy day, league meetings here. Last time you were on, I asked you welfare check. We were headed into the CFL season. I'll ask you the same question today. How are we feeling?
Yeah, feeling good. Look, we had a remarkably successful 2022, culminating in one of the great Grey Cup finishes of all time. The product last year, we made some changes. We saw scoring up 17%. Our game flow was fantastic. First downs were up everywhere we looked. The game was entertaining. So that's a really positive and bright spot heading into the 2023 season.
Biggest thing you feel like the league needs to work on now here headed into the new season?
Really, it's about executing on our business plan. That's it. And we're very focused on this transformation. Obviously, we have the partnership with Genius Sports, this marketable fan strategy. It's, the product, we've got that in a really good spot. We got to think about the inclusion of content now as a second part of our product strategy, because our players have the most remarkable stories to tell. And the more our fans hear those stories, the more they meet and connect with these amazing young men, the more attractive our game will be. And that'll just create this virtuous circle of positive growth. So I'd say really the number one priority is executing on our business plan.
Something I was excited, and our listeners, we were up in Saskatchewan, during the state of the CFL and all that, talking about a new American TV deal coming at some point. Thoughts on that, expanding out, getting more viewership south of the border?
Yeah, we are very close to finalizing that arrangement, and we'll hopefully have something to announce in the not too distant future. One of the things that we have noted for some time is, how do we take advantage of this tremendous talent we have that comes to us from U.S. colleges, and obviously that incredibly strong connection that U.S. college teams have with their fan bases. We saw that last night. Not a classic college football finale, by the way, but you definitely saw the power of the college football ecosystem. How do we connect those fans with our great game and with those athletes? That's something we've been working on. And in all of our conversations with potential U.S. broadcast partners, that has been at the epicenter of everything. And our relationship with Genius Sports and Genius's ability to make that connection has been a real bright spot in the discussions we've had with potential broadcasters.
Well, I'm trying to view, so, if we're adding in American viewers, are we expanding the pile of viewers at that point? Are we trying to supplement maybe some of the Canadian viewers that have weaned off over years? How do you view adding more American viewers to that pie?
Yeah, I think it's literally about just growing our fan base around the world. Look, we've got a strong fan base in Canada. We want to grow and build it. We've got a strong fan base in the US. We want to grow and build on it. We've got fans from around the world that are excited by our game. I think honestly, and not to sound too forward, but I think we have the most exciting brand of football in the world. Our kicking game is amazing. You know, as I said, our Grey Cup this past year, the finality was as good as you'll see in pro sports. We have a lot to be proud of here, and we need to get as many people excited about our game as possible. So our strategy is really very simple. It's to grow our fan base in Canada and around the world.
Schedule came out. Obviously, you talked the playoff rescheduling that to Saturdays. I got a lot of feedback. This is the worst CFS schedule that's ever been existed. I'm sure the truth lies somewhere in between there. Some of these later games, Sunday games, the Saturday playoffs. How much of that was genius, and the potential American TV deal a part of that?
Look, I think one thing that we have learned to do really well is to collaborate with our core partners. And there was a lot of involvement in that schedule from our teams, and really was talking about what's going to work well in their markets. How do we make sure we give our local fans the biggest opportunity possible to get to games and be part of our amazing, game ecosystem. The conversations with our Canadian partner, TSN, how do we help them? And then there were conversations with our potential media rights partners in the US about what we were thinking about. Collaboration has become a strength of our league, and I believe it is going to be a strength going forward.
Because it's tough. We got feedback, and I've been a Riders ticket holder for 20 years, and I can't. I'm like, you have to look at this bigger piece, right? If we can attract 10 times as many people watching online versus or watching on TV versus how do you balance that, the in-person that the Canadian Football League has been gate driven for so many years versus like we have to be able to be at a time when people will watch the games.
Yeah, you have to balance those interests. For the record, Reed, love you like a brother, but I'll tell you, I disagree that this is a bad schedule. I think it's a very good schedule. Yeah. And you're always, and look, I'm not saying that to be defensive, but you're always going to have people who would look at the schedule, and everyone, including me, could see an improvement or two. But scheduling in pro sports is very complicated, and kind of enough said there. But I'm really proud of the work we've done to, as I say, to collaborate with our teams and our broadcast partners. You're right. Look, we need to grow our ecosystem. We need to attract fans based on quality of our athletes and their amazing stories that they tell and that they can tell. And we need to have as many eyeballs on our product as we possibly can.
No, I totally agree with that. That's what I think we're on the same bit, but you get some of these people, you got to kind of look outside of, okay, I have my ticket here. I've been walking into the same gate entrance for the last 25 seasons or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah,
for sure. Look, again, we're gonna transform the league. We want to bring along our existing fans, make sure they feel respected and supported. But we need to go and find that next generation of fans. We are talking about, some of the techniques that are embedded in the Genius ecosystem. How do we activate those to attract new fans to our league? How do we use the game wagering opportunity to attract another type of fan that, might put a $10 or $20 bet down on a game and get engagement that way? So there are just so many opportunities in so many different places. We're just, it's quite simply, Reed, we're excited about our future, but we've got a lot of hard work in front of us, and we're committed to getting that hard work done.
We cover, obviously, CFL and then XFL USFL on here. USFL getting ready for their second season. They just passed their CBA last night. They're unionized and everything heading in, raising wages headed into this year. XFL kicks off in like 5 weeks. How are you guys now that you have, potentially, and we'll see, I know history and everything, but 2 spring leagues offering competitive starting pay versus players heading north. How do you guys kind of balance that out?
Well, look, one of the things that we have to offer is we've been around an awful long time. We're going to play our 110th Grey Cup this year. That's hard to compete with. We've got a very long and very storied track record of seeing players, come from the CFL onto NFL rosters. Right now we have young Nathan Rourke, this amazing phenom Canadian quarterback who's been doing a tour of NFL teams and showing what he's capable of. 25 Canadians played in the NFL last year. We've got a tremendous amount of talent. Look, I think everywhere we look, we've got something special here. We need to continue to focus on our own business plan. Look, leagues are going to come and leagues are going to go. We've been around an awful long time. We're the second biggest pro football league in the world with a tremendous history and track record. Our job is to focus on building on that and growing that. And then, frankly, supporting the rest of the football ecosystems. We all want the same thing. We want the game to grow, not just in North America, but around the world. And I think there's room for a lot of football in the world, because it is, in my opinion, I think you may share this, football is the greatest sport in the world and the funnest sport to watch. And, we just need to continue to, focus on that.
I'll circle back to the XFL thing, but speaking on Nathan Work, if he does end up signing with, the Broncos, or the Chiefs, I've seen, and Farhan's been frantically reporting all this, is that a success to the CFL to have probably the biggest star that they've seen? And, and I'm a BC Lions fan, but is that a success? He goes and plays backup here somewhere and holds a clipboard in the States?
Well, look, I don't want to see him holding a clipboard. I think he's too good to hold a clipboard for anybody, quite honestly. And I'm just such a big fan of his. Look, in the end, we want to celebrate success. That's what this league has always been about, and that's what it always should be about. We want our athletes to achieve the greatest success they possibly can. And we've set up our league and we've got a history that demonstrates our commitment to that principle. The fact of the matter is, would I love to see him in a BC Lions uniform this year? Sure, I would. But I'll be cheering for that player and that person first and foremost. And then, again, we shouldn't be surprised to see Canadian athletes having success around the world with sports. We just finished the World Junior Hockey Tournament. So watching our Canadian team win, the Canadians in the World Cup of Soccer, performed well. Canadian athletes are very capable of performing on the world stage. And again, we shouldn't be surprised when they have success.
Circling back real quick, and then I have another thing before we go. The XFL, CFL, or USFL thing, Chris Jones, and I'm going to talk with him later, had through Morley Scott, talking with the Elks about already running into some personnel issues and hiring people and getting people, to come up to the CFL personnel-wise, not player-wise. In terms of the cap and being able to pay coaches and stuff competitively, any thought process of having to work towards that in the future if you do have competing leagues for those kind of talent?
Yeah, we'll pay attention to it, and we'll obviously keep a keen eye on making sure that we understand on what those dynamics are. But again, right now, we feel like we've got a very compelling product. We've got a very compelling league. We have, a compelling infrastructure. But, Reed, your work is never done. There's always something to learn from what's happened, what will happen today or tomorrow that you have to take into account. And that's just the nature of the world and the world of sports, and frankly, the world of business. So, again, we won't, we are not dismissive of new information. As new information surfaces, we'll talk about it and determine whether adjustments need to be made. But we got a lot of talent up here. We got a lot of amazing coaching talent in our league, great general managers, great player personnel directors. We obviously want to keep all of those people in our league and happy. So again, we'll just pay attention to how things develop, and we'll make adjustments if and when necessary.
Speaking of the CFL team close to my heart, the Alouettes, with Gary Stern, kind of everything going on, future updates on the team there and potential sales, rumors, a lot of things were kind of swirling at the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to report that I've been talking with the majority owner, and first of all, I think they are fully committed to a bright future for the Alouettes. That's point number one. Point number two is the two core principles that they shared in August of 22. One, of course, was they want to win football games, and number two is they want to entertain their fans. Those two principles are still in place. Look, they want to and are committed to the club, but they are also open to conversations with local individuals and groups who might want to be involved in the Alouettes. So, look, I have to say I've been remarkably impressed by the majority owner and the way they are handling their business. I am talking to them on a regular basis. They're thoughtful, considerate, and committed to the future of the Alouettes. And, we're going to continue to talk to them. One of the things that they are not about is they're not about fanfare, and they don't want to be in the media. So we talk privately and quietly, but boy, every time I have a chance to talk to their representatives, I have to say I'm remarkably impressed.
Last question for me. I appreciate your time. Reports coming out, Dan Barnes here with the Toronto Sun, talking about a touchdown Pacific, right? And then we have touchdown Atlantic coming again this year, and the Argos and all that. West Coasters, do we have something like that to look forward to here coming up?
Well, one of the things that, came out of last year's Touchdown Atlantic is the realization those events are special, and they just create such an amount of energy, so much great energy for the league. And we started talking about the possibility of a game, possibly on Vancouver Island. Our BC Lions owner, Amar Doman, of course, was born and raised in Victoria, is very proud of his roots on the island and his family's history there. And we started talking about the possibility of a game there in the 2024 season. Those conversations are underway. I think it'd be very exciting. We were at the Vanier Cup this year. I had a chance to visit with Monsieur Tanguay, who's, of course, very involved in the Rouge et Or. They won the national championship this year. And we are talking about going there and talking about the possibility of a Touchdown Quebec game. That's a great market. It's a great city. It's one of the great cities to visit. And that kind of tourism angle is big. And then when we were at the Vanier Cup, the City of London, the mayor, the head of athletics at Western University, and Tourism London wanted to talk to us about the possibility of a Touchdown London game. So, look, this is a chance for us to grow our fan base, to build a deeper and richer fan base around the country. So the Touchdown Series is an important part of our past, and will be a very big part of our future.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Busy day, and thank you so much for taking some time with us.
Yeah, and best wishes to all of you. And listen, good luck in everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, if the Sea Dragons don't work out for us, I can tell you the Kraken, I don't know if you're following Pacific Northwest hockey, just walking off a 3-0 shutout of the Bruins tonight. Very, very exciting 6th road game. But yes, we will have a team to root for nonetheless. How are you doing, Matt Lyons?
Doing good. Haven't been following the Kraken too much, but it sounds like I might need to.
You might need to. We're here. Matt's been covering I'm still getting used to the Sea Dragons, the XFL Dragons here. Matt's been covering it for News Hub, having him come on here tonight. Matt, I don't know if you watched the Saw franchise, but I'm kind of like Jigsaw tonight. I want to play a game. My Amazon Fresh order is being delivered anytime between 7 and 8, and it contains alcohol. So there's a non-zero factor that I might have to step off the podcast for 2 minutes to answer the door. But we'll play a game. It'll be fun. It'll be exciting.
For sure.
So, Matt, first off, we're here at training camp. We're taking the field, doing walkthroughs, padded practices, whatever else kind of this weekend. How has the first week of kind of the XFL, off-season, preseason, whatever, how has it felt for you?
It's felt good. It's nice to see all of the XFL social accounts ramping up and getting all sorts of different content of just everybody doing conditioning and all their workouts and whatever. I believe they're going to be in pads for the first time early next week. So haven't seen any of that yet, but yeah, I think it's great. They've been doing a great job. We've gotten a lot of great Sea Dragons content out there, and I hope we just keep seeing more of it.
It's good. I feel like we're getting there. To me, I would like to see the social people brought in a little bit. It feels like now we have directors. We're getting memes today. Like St. Louis Battlehawks was tweeting about what Pop-Tart flavors. All the people were like, I like all this. We're still getting the generic, okay, the game tickets are for sale. USFL does that a lot, social media kind of by committee there. As we record now, single game tickets available for anybody but Vegas at this point. From what I've seen, seems like things are flowing. Thoughts on just any of that? Have you heard any better sales, worse sales, any issues, anything, or all smooth sailing?
I really haven't seen a whole lot about ticket sales in general, aside from what you shared about people that were buying season tickets a few days ago. And it does look like things have filled out a lot more than I personally expected around the whole league, which is awesome to see. It seemed like most of the lower sections were pretty full, or at least half full. So if they're already on to single game tickets, I'm excited to see what game days are like, because I think they're going to be pretty packed houses for the most part. Yeah, at least week one.
Yeah, I went on to get our because I'll try to get credited for the kickoff game, but I always buy tickets just to make sure. Same with the CFL. I was surprised logging on to do the pre-sale for the single game tickets, how sold out Arlington was, at least for that first game. I was surprised. I'm like, okay, well let me just get a decent ticket here that's not an arm and a leg. But the first rows on home side, I mean, very, very packed. Seems like it's kind of a weird seating chart there with Globe Life. I was just reading, I think Battlehawks is doing really well. I know people want them to open up like the upper bowl. I think we need to walk before we can run here and kind of get that going. But it certainly seems, I was very hesitant, and I still am with some of the markets, Orlando, but so far it seems like, if we can get Seattle going, we get Arlington going, get St. Louis going, you just can't have empty seats in there.
Yeah. And to your point, I think it might have been you and me chatting about it a while back. We were kind of hesitant about returning fans from 2020. Like, how many people really would have been following it this whole time? And if they hadn't, if like they heard about XFL's back randomly, how many of them would really go out and buy tickets? And it seems like there is, like you said, significantly more than we both thought. So great sign.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair here, XFL needs to, by doing the modified hub and playing in and renting all the stadiums and doing all this stuff, like you got to have packed houses. USFL, and I know I made fun and people made fun, but audiences there, if you're doing all this work, you have to have, sold out, near sold out, packed, at least to look good, and then you get that money back from ticket sales, and you're selling concessions there, you're selling all these kind of things that go along with it. So good to see. We'll have to track it. It's still early, but at least that's kind of the main story with that. A couple other notes here, and then we'll do roster and player stuff. Haley Sea Dragons doing a local fan event on Monday here in Seattle, flying up DiNucci, Josh Gordon, and then Jim Haslett up to, it's somewhere near kind of Lumen Field. Thoughts on that, them coming like, hey, we're in Arlington, but we can still come up, we can still try to do some of these local. I know St. Louis had a happy hour, I think, that was announced last minute with Coach Becht as well this week. Thoughts about them still doing those?
Yeah, I think it's great. Seattle is definitely still leading the charge and just like doing things in their local market. It's good to see St. Louis doing that too. I think Becht has actually been there a handful of times at this point doing stuff. It'd be nice to see everybody else in the league start doing that a little more, but I just also assume now that camp's rolling, that's going to be kind of limited. But I guess counter to that, now that everybody's in the same spot, who knows? Maybe it will be easy to just be like, hey, all right, let's take a Monday, let's take a Saturday before the season and take these couple guys and fly out to the place. I think it's great. I think they need to keep doing more of that, and especially since they're not like residing here and doing training camps here, the more of that they can do, the better. Because especially with players like Josh Gordon, because that's like, you don't need to follow alt leagues to know who that is. Everybody knows who that is. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably going to be people that they might not have ever heard of the Dragons before, but they'll hear Josh Gordon's going to be doing a meet and greet on Monday, and that might attract a couple more people. So, yeah, I think it's great. I think it is absolutely awesome.
I think Seattle's lucky in that way that you have two marketable people like that, right? I don't know, a DeAndre Francois or, whoever, like, I think it just lucks out. Okay, we have a former NFLer here that, presumably is going to be, and we can talk through the quarterbacks here, but, presumably DiNucci is going to see, playing time on the field. Yeah. I can't imagine. You have Josh Gordon there. Like, I just think that makes a nice pair that way. We're like, hey, we can have these guys. I know that Vipers are doing that with Brian Scott and Martavis Bryant right down there and doing some social videos. So yeah, I like that. We're kind of spotlighting pairs here. Like, let's get just a couple people that that the casual fan might recognize with that. And then we've seen the rumor going around with Jim Haslett being rumored for the Falcons defensive coordinator position, right, with Arthur Smith over there. I haven't heard anything since the initial reports. You would have to imagine the XFL head coaches have like NFL clauses in their contract. Thoughts on that if the Sea Dragons were to lose Jim Haslett?
I mean, it would kind of suck to lose your head coach a couple weeks before the season starts, but at the same time, he has it seems like he's not been quite as hands-on as everybody else on his staff, like going back for the last handful of months. Like even when we were at the XFL showcase in Arizona, I believe Randy Mueller was there in his place, and then June Jones might have been with him too. I don't remember for sure. And then when they were assigning the coaches to different to the each cities or announcing the coaching assignments, Mueller was also sitting in his place there. And I mean, we have no idea what he was doing or why he wasn't there. So it could have been something like serious or whatever, but it's not the greatest look. It's not the greatest look to have all the other 7 franchises being headed by their actual coaches. And then it's just like, oh yeah, your coach is not here today, but here's this guy that you're really never going to see once the season starts. So yeah, if he gets the job, then awesome. I like the point of these leagues is even for coaches to get another opportunity. So I think it'd be awesome if he got that opportunity with the Falcons. And if that happened, I would assume June Jones would probably take over as head coach because he worked with Randy Mueller, leading the Houston, I want to say Gamblers, Roughnecks in 2020. But yeah, I mean, if he stays, we'll definitely be happy about it. I'm pretty excited to see what he can do with the defensive schemes and whatnot. So we'll see.
Yeah, I remember back in 2020, I think that was the Bob Stoops was rumored to go, one of the college positions, right, beginning of the season. USFL, we've seen that, the rumors this week, Kirby Wilson stepping down for personal reasons. Obviously, Larry Fedora left the Breakers here in the offseason. I don't, I share those stories, the Kirby Wilson and all this stuff. I don't think it's his sky is falling. Obviously, it's not a good look to lose your coach in the XFL or the USFL. But like you said, they're bringing in these coaches. It's always going to be, we need to have a high enough quality of coach that they would still want to be somewhat desirable, right, in open vacant positions. And so, when the Breakers lost Larry, or even with the Maulers now losing Kirby Wilson, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think in Kirby Wilson's case, people are almost happier that he's not there.
They're probably better off.
Yeah, but I want to keep that same energy for both. I don't want it to be Reed's being, because I just shared this week, hey, I think Kirby Wilson looks like that's done there, right? But it's a hard balance. Same with players. We're seeing guys. Steven Montez here, quarterback, just a few weeks ago. Going back, you're getting these guys that are on the fringe. They're always going to be rumored to be in these positions. So I guess that's good. I agree. Jim Haslett has not felt the embodiment of spring football thus far, but we had Jim Zorn before, so I'm kind of used to that, because Jim Zorn kind of felt the same way too. I'm here, but I don't really know what this is.
Well, and that being said, though, Haslett does seem super engaged at camp right now. Videos coming out of them in team meetings and stuff with the whole room singing and all that type of, he does seem pretty engaged now that he's there. So hopefully that continues, because it'd be cool to see him.
So now that we've got, rosters here figured out, like I said, I think, Steven Montez could be coming back. We don't know yet. We have DiNucci, Lewerke here. There's kind of at least a third quarterback position there. Obviously, Josh Gordon coming into the supplemental. Thoughts how the Sea Dragons handled kind of the supplemental draft? We did kind of our broad show last week, but not really deep dive on the Dragons. Kind of thoughts how they've rounded everything out?
Well, with the supplemental draft in particular, I think they did a great job of just bolstering the offensive line. They added a couple pieces to the defensive line, I believe, too. But they weren't as sexy of pieces. And then Josh Gordon, obviously, that's the big addition in the supplemental draft, which I'd assume he was just waiting to know that, okay, I'm not going to get signed to an NFL futures deal. So, yeah, I'll go ball out in the XFL, hopefully. But, yeah, with you were asking about DiNucci?
Just the quarterback position there, where, if we have DiNucci, right? Lewerke was there. He's a spring leaguer, right? I think he spent time. He wasn't the one that Ryan Willis was the one that spent time with the Bears. I know Lewerke's gotten some looks.
Lewerke's spent a bit of time with the Patriots and the Giants, and then in between there, he was with the Alphas for the spring league.
The Alphas, the very Orlando Guardians.
Yeah.
So if, presuming Montez goes back in there, do we still see DiNucci, number one with the bullet here leading the quarterback room?
Probably. It would surprise me if Montez would have to really perform in camp, I think, to beat out DiNucci. Just because DiNucci has the most experience in the NFL, actually starting games. I think Montez out of the three is just the most like raw, talented freak athlete of the three. He's also the tallest, I believe. Yeah, he's 6'5". The other two are Danucci's 6'2" and Lewerke's 6'3". But that being said, Lewerke and Montez have also been in and out of the NFL. They just, I'm not sure about Lewerke, but Montez I know has not really seen playing time outside of the preseason. So just that alone, I think Danucci's a pretty solid lock for the starter.
Josh Gordon, 31. I had to look up. I knew it was on the other side of 30. I wasn't quite sure what, how close to 30 or higher. Feels attention grabbing. You think Gordon still has enough in his tank to go here?
I do. I think just with the level of talent, like the reason he wasn't in the NFL for so long wasn't because he wasn't talented. Like that 2013 season, he missed the first 2 games of the season due to being suspended for marijuana, and he still led the league in receiving that year. So I think he, just from a pure physical talent standpoint, he still has a leg up on a lot of these other guys. He probably does. He's not what he was in 2013, but if nothing else, I think it's someone that a lot of these guys can learn something from. And he's been in professional settings, even if he's been kicked out of them a handful of times. He's been in there, and like the last handful of NFL stops he had, he actually didn't get in trouble. They just didn't want to keep him around. So I'm excited to see what he can do, because I do think that he's got a little bit left in the tank.
This is in the north. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like 17 wide receivers right now on the roster here. Heavy. What do you make of that? I mean, I know we're going to be doing cutdowns here, but that to me is the most wide receivers I've seen sitting on the roster here before cuts of any of these I've looked at.
Well, with June Jones schemes too, they don't really use tight ends much. So I know they drafted Joshua Perkins, a tight end, but I would assume he's going to be used as a wide receiver. But the 3 guys that I'm sure there's going to be other guys that like pop out once the season starts, but the 3 guys that just by looking at their track record, I think will make an impact for sure. Josh Gordon, obviously. Joshua Perkins, who's played in 14 NFL games and was with Atlanta when they lost the Super Bowl to the Pats. And then Blake Jackson, who he was with the Roughnecks in 2020. And in that season, he caught 5 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. So wasn't amazing, but like he did make some plays in there. So I think that it'd be safe to say with the same offensive coordinator and the same scheme, he's probably going to get some looks. But everybody else, it's a toss up. There is a lot of different receivers that seem to have a lot of different skill sets.
June Jones, coming in now, being able to focus only on the offensive coordinator, presumably here with Jim Haslett. But I mean, we're just looking for high power, fast, right? I mean, what are we looking to see from that? And maybe people that aren't familiar and didn't, follow the Roughnecks, didn't do any of that stuff back in 2020. I mean, I know obviously June's coached in Hawaii and everything else, but like, what are we expecting to see from the Dragons?
A lot of speed and a lot of just downfield shots. I think it's going to be like pound the ball running and then take your shots. So it should be a pretty fun offense. I would assume it would be something kind of similar to maybe like the 49ers, but not as fancy as like a Shanahan offense. But we'll see. Because, in the XFL, people like to have fun. So I'm sure June Jones is going to have some fun scheming up for all these guys.
Well, he's already said, he's going to go for 3 every time, which,
yeah,
I like it. I mean, the Dragons were not a great team back in 2020. I don't think Zorn, and I know that Mike Riley, and we didn't have the offensive coordinator, and then Jim Zorn took over play calling and kind of all that stuff. But we're nice to see one of the tentpole, I would say, franchises just in terms of like fan attendance in Seattle. You think they have enough here as a casual fan? If I'm trying to get invested in the Dragons, you feel like you have enough?
I think so. I would definitely say so.
In terms of, we brought in the offensive line, filling that out. Any other surprises from the supplemental draft? Anyone that you were surprised came in or to kind of bolster the Dragons?
Not particularly someone they brought in, but I will, before we move off of wide receivers, actually mention someone they lost. So Rashard Davis, who was actually drafted first overall in the 2020 XFL draft, and didn't play in that league either. He was drafted to the Sea Dragons, and then he decided to re-sign with the Showboats, formerly the Bandits, but it is the same franchise. So I know there have been a couple or a handful of players that even on this team that have come from the USFL, but Rashard Davis and a couple other guys are some of the first ones to go the other way.
Yeah, I think Sam I think he played out there was 9 so far, and someone will scream at me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong with that or underselling the USFL in any way. But yeah, Rashard Davis, interesting. Yeah, be drafted. That's got to be a world record to be drafted twice by the XFL and never play a single snap on the field.
Yeah.
I don't think that's cause for too much concern. Like I said, I mean, looking at this wide receiver room, incredibly deep, and it could just be he's sitting there too and counting the numbers and being like,
absolutely.
They're gonna need me more. Who is did Akil Glass go to the Showboats? Who is their quarterback there? Do we know who that is yet?
Akil Glass went to the Breakers, I believe.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure I did that right up. That was a little while back, but I want to say he went to the Breakers. I don't know who the Showboats quarterback is now because it was Teamu. But he's gone. He's back in the XFL. So I remember it was announced, but I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, because I'm looking here. I'm looking on just USFL Newsroom here. Yeah, they still have Jordan listed. Brady Wyatt is the other one on there from Memphis. Teamu finally surfacing. I guess we haven't had a news break on here since that. Just him finally showing up with the Defenders, right?
Yep. And I think it's going to be a tough quarterback room to crack, but I mean, iron sharpens iron. So if he can make it out of there as the top guy, then he's really talented. That's for sure. But all three of their quarterbacks, I believe, are pretty different. I believe it's 3, have pretty different skill sets too. So that'll be really interesting to see what happens over there.
Well, yeah, because they still don't. Yeah, they have Derek King and then Eric Dungy in there. They haven't added, the XFL.com hasn't added Teamu to that yet. But interesting, I think Becht was already full in St. Louis. Would have been cool to see that, right? I mean, obviously, just to do that. He'll compete. I don't know. I don't know what to expect anymore. I mean, Teamu was so hot back in 2020. Went to the, he spent time right with the Chiefs and then the Lions, I think, and then went to obviously the USFL and really struggled there. I could never really figure out. It just seemed like he was so rattled and in his head, and I don't know if it was stage was too big. I mean, what did you make of his struggles in the USFL?
It just seemed he just seemed kind of shell shocked the whole time. Like he had the same center he had on the Battlehawks, so there'd be some communication stuff that's the same. So I don't know if it just wasn't fitting the scheme or people just weren't buying in around him, because he had his moments, but it definitely wasn't. He definitely wasn't what he was in the XFL. I would assume that whatever the schemes are, he just fit the Battlehawk schemes better.
Looking here back on to finish up our conversation about the Sea Dragons, right? So obviously June Jones, interesting when we talked with Hazlitt at the town hall. I guess that's what it was called, like the local fan activation event. He's like, I'm not even concerned about offense. I'm leaving out the June Jones. Ron Zook here coming in as the DC. Any thoughts on that and the rest of the staff that Hazlitt's put together?
I really like Zook as the defensive coordinator. He was with the Packers for a while, and he's got a lot of college experience, college coaching experience. But yeah, I just think, especially like if you have a defensive head coach, like getting another seasoned defensive mind isn't going to hurt you. And it sounds like they're going to be running an attacking 3-4 defense. So expect a lot of blitzes, and yeah, it should be fun to watch, I think. Usually when you have a lot of blitzes, it kind of forces a lot of errors. So I expect a lot of turnovers, hopefully.
Oh, well, that would be good. I mean, excitement here on both. I like aggressive coaching. Sam and I talked in his interview here, I think it'll be after this, about some of the schemes in the USFL and maybe some of the coaches and do we feel like we had enough time to implement things in the time that we wanted? So hopefully here, 5-week training camp and we're really diving in, really able to get everybody up to that. It would be good. It'd be good to see aggressiveness on both sides of the ball, I guess, if Hazlitt can really run that defense and then have June Jones kind of take the offense. Any other thoughts, roster, anything else from the Dragons, either on the field side or on the sidelines?
I won't get too into specific offensive linemen, but I will just say there's a lot of NFL experience across the Sea Dragons offensive line, including one of the tackles who was like a 4th round draft pick and started for a handful of seasons for the Texans. But then a bunch of people from the Breakers in the USFL who had one of the better offensive lines in that league. So I really think that the Dragons offensive line is going to be pretty solid across the board. And then we have some people on the defensive side too, that a lot of NFL experience and some more breakers as well. Sharif Miller, a defensive end outside linebacker, who was a 4th round pick for the Eagles in 2019. And he did pretty well with the Breakers. I don't think he was like their featured defensive end. I'd have to look at his stats again. I believe that was Davin Bellamy, but he had a good season out there. And then a bunch of NFL guys, Jordan Evans, who spent some time with the Bengals, Emmanuel Smith, who was on one of the Chiefs Super Bowl rosters, Tazar Skipper, who was with Pittsburgh for quite a while, just a lot of NFL experience. Same with in the defensive back room, Chris Jones, who's been with Lions, Cardinals, Vikings, Titans, Raiders, and Kareem Orr, who was with the Rams 2021, I believe. So a lot of NFL experience on the defensive side.
You guys might be talking about this more in the other group chat as well, but like, who is the chalk pick here for like strongest 1 or 2 teams here going in, and obviously we got to get through cuts and everything else, but I mean, who is people feeling confident about?
We really haven't discussed it too much among everybody, and I haven't gotten the chance to look into every team super deeply yet. But if I had to just kind of guess based on looking at like the power position, like just the power players on each team, I would probably have to say the DC Defenders are up there, the Brahmas are up there, and then the Sea Dragons are up there. I think those are going to be 3 of your better teams, and then I think the Battlehawks are right up there too. But those other 3, I just I don't know. I got a feeling about them.
It seems destined in the way the divisions are set up. It seems destined that at least the Texas team is going to make it to the championship game, right? People seem really down on the Orlando Guardians, like really down on that, which is odd. And so it seems like you're going to have a Texas team in there and then the team of the North. I know the rumors came out this week. It could be at the Alamo Dome. That makes sense. We reported last week that the Choctaw Stadium is booked with like the rugby team on the day that would be the championship game, and they said that they would not have 2 coinciding events on the same day. So you either do it at the Alamo Dome or at TDECU Stadium, which is where it was going to be back in 2020. I like that. That made sense in 2020 because that's where they had all the training camps and everything. I think Alamo Dome's cool. I mean, it holds like 65,000. I mean, it's a huge place. I've seen the Royal Rumble there. Like, thoughts on the Alamo Dome potentially as the host site before I let you go here?
I think that's a great site. Like San Antonio shows up too. So I think that's great. And it's in Texas between 2 of your other teams, basically. So you're going to have people, it's probably going to attract quite a few people from throughout the entire league, I'd imagine, regardless of what teams make it to the championship. Yeah, I mean, it would have kind of been cool to see it in Vegas had they been able to land the bigger stadium. But I do actually think that the Vegas smaller stadium, especially with how late they announced it, might be beneficial because they're not selling tickets even yet for that. So it's going to be tough to fill that one. I kind of got sidetracked. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. It's all good. It's meandering here. It's good. No, my Vegas reporter that, Chris Maathuis is coming up on the show. He doesn't even think they can get 8,000 sold on there. So, I mean, it's just to stay on that. I will tell you, if they do it in San Antonio, that is the most fun City. Dorothy and I went there for spring break a couple years ago. I might be partying there all week. So we might just say, like, I'll get a hotel on the Riverwalk. We can come party if anyone wants to come down or whatever. But we had the most fun, such a phenomenal time. So I do think that is probably the best host city. If you want to, we're close to home. A Texas team's going to be in there anyway. Hopefully the Brahmas don't, but wouldn't that be like first ever XFL championship game, home team, home field advantage on that. So
that would be pretty nuts. They might have to change the venue.
Well, Matt, I appreciate it. Matt covering the Sea Dragons for XFL News Hub and everything else. We'll get you back on. I know you're always busy with work, but I appreciate you taking the time tonight. Yeah, thanks for having me. Always appreciate coming on, and hopefully everybody else is enjoying it too. Yeah, it'll be good. We're going to try to swing by the event on Monday. We have a Kraken game, so we'll try to swing by, maybe handshake Josh Gordon, and then meander on to the it's a day drinking day, Kraken day game. It's going to be crazy. So we'll go see the Danucci and Jim Haslett and everyone pregame. I think that's the plan. Nice. That sounds like a solid plan. I'll probably see you there. I think the last time we had Sam on was Sam Shady Sports on YouTube, also continuing to grow over there, which is great to see. I think the last time we were on, we had like the leaked team cities, right? Or the leaked teams. I think it was the leaked XFL cities we had, courtesy of Larry Lee. And now we're back again, and we have actual XFL training camp to talk about. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to be back. Yeah, I believe you're right about that last time. It was right after the cities were leaked, and we were talking about the showcases at the time.
Yeah, so Sam is great because, Sam had, at that point, had kind of collected all the different players that were at the showcases, some hidden gems that maybe weren't getting the right publicity. Now we're doing a deep dive today, Vegas specifically, and then obviously anything else Sam wants to talk about in terms of XFL training camps. Sam, how are you doing? First off, how does it feel to have like real-life XFL training camp to talk about soon?
Oh, I'm so excited. So excited. It's been a long time coming. I was a huge fan of the 2020 XFL. I did not cover football at that point. So it's a little bit different this time around because now I'm not covering it, but following every last transaction, every coach hire, all that stuff. So it's been a different experience this time around. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and to me, I was the same way. Covered it, just as a fan, or didn't cover it. Just watched it as a fan. Didn't know anything was going on. Getting the emails this week, we have a media availability. We have directors that are handling team communications. We have a schedule for training camp. If you're in Arlington, really feels real. We never got that with the USFL. I don't know if we're going to get that this time, but it always felt like the USFL. Okay, if you're in Birmingham, if you work for like NBC, we can get the weather guy out here to cover stuff. But it never felt this to me, and it just from my whatever CFL stuff as well, it feels a little bit more like a real football league that we're doing here.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, with the way they've pulled out information, the way they've posted it, it seems a lot better prepared. And that's coming from somebody who considers himself more of a USFL fan than an XFL fan. So, I mean, I personally think the XFL has done a great job with basically the vast majority of what they've done this offseason so far.
Yeah, just and I was critical, and I know, listener Max here, producer Max, and, we've been going back and forth for the last year, and God, we're hiring all these people, and what the hell do we need? We got these social media people for everything, whatever, seeing the grid of these are the days that you can talk to the head coach, and these are the days we have player interviews, and I'm like, oh, it really makes me feel, because again, this is a hobby for us, right? It's a passion project, and the easier you can make it for, professionals, for whoever we are, I don't know what category we fall into with that, but it makes my life smile. So I'm very happy to see that. In terms of, you did a big write-up following the Vipers supplemental draft. We've been, talking Rob Woodson. I don't think we have to worry as much about the Cashman Field stuff. I have one of the Vegas reporters coming on to talk about that this week. Overall thoughts on the Vipers staff? We've got Brian Scott, allocated to that. Everything else, kind of general thoughts, and then we'll dive in.
As far as the coaching staff goes, I personally think they've got one of the better staffs in the league. I'm a big fan of Rod Woodson as a head coach. As we know, they got Chris Dishman as the defensive coordinator, which was a huge hire. Jen Welter, linebackers coach, another great hire. And then we recently got Dwayne Taylor as the offensive coordinator, which Mike's been talking about for a long time. Mike Mitchell, XFL insider. But really, I think what stood out to everybody was the roster that they've built so far. I mean, a lot of names that NFL fans are going to recognize: Vic Beasley, Martavis Bryant. Whether you go through the roster, top to bottom, it's going to be guys that you may have seen on the transaction wire getting cut or signed from team to team, but a lot of guys that you're going to recognize for sure for the casual fan, which I think is a big deal when you're trying to draw in a new fan base.
Yeah, because Vegas was a unique one where a couple of the coaches were coming from college, couldn't beat Mike, like you said, had kind of ruined them for a while. So can you fill us in maybe if people haven't followed that and just the late kind of additions to the coaching staff in that way?
Absolutely. So as Mike reported before, Dwayne Taylor is the offensive coordinator now. He was previously with Alabama A&M with Akil Glass, who signed with the New Orleans Breakers, as we all know now. That's why everybody was speculating that Akil Glass could come to the XFL. Ultimately didn't happen. But long story short, Dwayne Taylor is a guy who has led some prolific offenses at the college level. He was an offensive coordinator, I believe, with Alabama A&M for, I want to say 5 seasons from 2018 up till present day, before taking the Vegas Vipers job. And he's a guy who's run a 2-quarterback system in the past after Akil Glass graduated. So that was something I had speculated on prior to the addition of Brian Scott, but I think Brian Scott kind of puts an end to that conversation.
Is Akil Glass, is that the biggest off-season signing for the USFL at this point?
That's a hard thing to say. I would think it's either Akil Glass or James Morgan. And as we all know, James Morgan was signed by the NFL, so it remains to be seen if he returns to the USFL.
You think if it weren't for friend of all of ours, Brian Scott, you think Akil Glass would be with the Vegas team?
Most likely, yes. Yeah, if they didn't have Brian Scott as that established number 1 quarterback, which I expect him to be, I personally think, you probably bring in Glass to compete with Perez. And if one of those guys doesn't cement themselves as the number 1, you start Perez and then kind of mix in McClendon.
I try to take my personal opinion out of this. I'm friends with, we're friends with people and we talk to people like Brian Scott, objectively, right, looking through, 2 seasons of the Spring League, we covered, the second one. I think he gets, if you're just a USFL fan, you watched him with the Stars, he showed a little bit, he got hurt. Case Cookus led them. Case Cookus is the one that took him to the championship game. He's the one that, got the NFL, right, with the Rams, all that. So is Brian getting, is he too praised? Is he not praised? Like where are we falling on Brian at this point? Where is this stock, too high or too low?
I'm glad you asked. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Brian Scott as a person, as a player, just all around as a good guy. But with that being said, I personally think he did not get enough praise. It was as if the second Case Cookus came in and looked competent, everybody forgot Brian Scott even existed as a USFL quarterback. And it was like, wait a minute, this guy looked like the best quarterback in the league for the first 2.5 games of the season. I say 3, but that's not really fair to him because he got injured early in the 3rd game, and had like over 580 yards passing, I believe, 5 touchdowns, and I believe 2 or 3 interceptions. So again, looking at like one of the best quarterbacks in the USFL, and now he's with the XFL, where I believe that he could be potentially one of the better quarterbacks there, facing a lot of former NFL competition.
If I'm Brian Scott's agent, and I don't know who that is or any of this stuff, but when Brian retires from football, whenever that day is, whether it's a year from now, 10 years from now, whatever, Brian needs to go on to like Big Brother, Survivor, needs to go on to one of those shows, the United by Football that they have with Brian Scott, where he was like, not arguing, but kind of like getting into it with his teammates, and we're having the house meeting and we're inviting him, whatever. To me, that was the greatest hour of TV that the USFL produced, off the field. I know we had Pizzagate and that was great too, but I loved like the semi-heel turn for an episode that we had of Brian Scott. So I would get Brian into the Big Brother house here, or maybe, maybe you do that. It doesn't work in with NFL OTAs, but like I said, eventually at some point when Brian's done with his football career, I think we need to see that.
That's a very interesting take. I definitely was not prepared for that, for sure.
Okay.
But I personally think, yeah, he'd be great on any one of those shows. I could see him doing a bunch of different things. He could definitely be like an announcer. There's a number of things I could see Brian Scott doing after his career. But yeah, definitely some reality TV in his future for sure.
So we talked about Dwayne Taylor coming on, Chris Dishman, the other defensive coordinator. You're high on that hire, so you think that's someone good to bring in?
Yes. I again, another guy that personally just strikes me as a coach that players want to play for. I mean, he's a player's coach. He's a former player himself, former defensive back in the NFL. So he can teach a lot of these defensive backs that are coming in how to play the game. And on top of that, he's been there and he's done that. So he can relate to what these players are going through. He's been a guy that's gotten cut, he's gotten signed, so he knows what it feels like. So I think that's important when you're relating to these players and telling them, hey, look, this is what you got to do to be successful. I know I did it. I was in the NFL. I was in the USFL. I led my team to this, this stance. And here I am now. So, I'm trying to lead you guys to a championship victory in 2023. So this is what you need to do. And you're going to either listen to me or I'll find one of a number of other guys that will fill your spot.
Top to bottom, you mentioned Jen on there, and we've done, I'm trying to think back, like we've done deep dive some of the coaching stuff. I just want to make sure now that we're trying to get a picture of what this team's going to look like here heading into training camp. Anyone else standing out for you that you think will just molding this team into kind of what we're going to see over the next 5 weeks?
Yeah, very veteran staff overall in terms of NFL experience. I'm Bob Wiley, former Cleveland Browns offensive line coach. Ray Sherman, longtime wide receiver coach in the NFL, and then Chuck Bresnahan, another NFL name. So, I mean, no matter where you look on this roster in terms of coaching staff, a lot of these guys are highly experienced, and I think that's going to play into their favor in 2023.
What do you think about the late home start for Vegas here, trying to kind of balance out with maybe the lack of a rollout thus far, locally in the fan base and trying to get tickets sold for all that stuff here coming up?
Financially, it's probably the best decision for them, but I would have liked to see them open the season against Arlington in Vegas because of the historical significance. So, many years ago, back in, I believe it was 1964 at Cashman, they played a game against the Houston Oilers. So I thought it would be kind of cool to bring in, sorry, not the Arlington Renegades, but the Houston Roughnecks. Had they brought in the Roughnecks, it would have kind of been historically significant, but unfortunately we're not going to see that in week 1.
Yeah, I think they're padding it out there. I think when we did the schedule deep dive, we're kind of burying some of the games on FX until we get the I guess the fan base up there. Curious to kind of see how that looks like when we have the single game tickets out for that. Don't have an update yet. I know there was a lot of confusion as well. Was, hey, okay, we're doing pre-sales now, and now we're doing the single game tickets. Will be out by the time this episode airs. Everyone but Vegas. Kind of curious to see what that looks like. In terms of the offense we're going to see on the field, Rob Woodson. We got Brian Scott. What are you picturing? Kind of the identity of this team?
Well, I think it's going to be very high flying. I think they're going to spread teams out. They've got a lot of talent at wide receiver. So, I mean, obviously we know about Martavis Bryant, but they also brought in Saheed Blacknell, former XFL receiver, played some time in the NFL as well. Jeff Badette, another USFL guy. Isaiah Macklin, another pretty solid receiver. There's a lot of names on this list to like. Cyrus Holder, a guy they took in the supplemental draft that I like a lot as well. So I think they're going to, like I said, spread teams out a lot. I know they have some solid backs in DeAndre Torrey, John Lovett, Matt Jones. So, I mean, all these guys are really good running backs. So I really think this offense is going to be very dominant very quickly, quite honestly.
Were you surprised that Badette made the jump from you? He seems like one of the more high profile, at least from my name, him jumping here from the USFL, non-QB related.
Yeah, I was surprised. In fact, I was surprised about a lot of the names that made the leap. I mean, I expected a lot of the guys to a certain extent. I knew some of them were looking, I talked to a couple of them off camera, but the amount of guys that ultimately made the leap, I thought was a little bit surprising.
In terms of the extended, and I think we reported USFL is now going to 4 weeks of training camp. XFL here, extending that out, trying to get that up to the spring football, too short last season with the USFL. I thought that was a major hindrance. It's like, we don't want to pay everybody an extra week. Like, let's come out. In terms of quality on the field, week one, where Vegas is going to be in that opening game. I mean, what are we kind of expecting from that? Bob Stoops has kind of been through this before, and we'll have the Renegades up to snuff.
That's a great question, and I love how you asked that. Bob Stoops is obviously a veteran at this level, so he knows what he's been through, knows what he's going through. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup in week one. Obviously, Rod Woodson's a first-time head coach, so there's a lot of questions to be answered there. But, he's got some veteran assistants to lean on, so I think that's going to be a helpful aspect to this. Chris Dishman went through this last season, so I think he's going to lean on his experience with that quite heavily. I thought one of the things that was more interesting that I had heard from coaches this past season was that they tried to dumb it down too much, that they thought they wouldn't be able to install enough in 3 weeks. And ultimately, by the end of the season, they realized that they could have installed so much more, because a lot of these players, again, they're NFL level players. They've been there, they've done that, they've experienced multiple different playbooks. So a lot of the install was a lot easier than they expected.
That's an interesting point, because I've talked with people off, and not to be too XFL centric, USFL, but in terms of like the play calling in the USFL season one, do you attribute that to some of these older coaches, right? They're trying to figure out, bringing in Kirby Wilson now, who may not be with the USFL anymore as we record this, but you felt like that was symptomatic of the USFL season one, was not trying to do enough on the field?
To a certain extent, yeah. I think it was a multitude of things. Certain teams had more chemistry than others due to previous relationships, among the players and the coaching staffs, which helped a lot. Some of these staffs had never played at the spring level together before. So a lot of these players, they had no experience with the coaches. So I think certain teams, we saw that affect them more than others. Like the Stars, for instance, had a pretty decent start to the season, and I believe that's due to the fact that a lot of those players had played together before. And then you look at Michigan, who had a rather rough start to their season. Most of those coaches have never been at the spring football level before, and a lot of those players had never played together before. So a lot less chemistry to work with, and I think that showed up on the field.
Yeah, I said that. I thought at the beginning of the season, and with Brian or anyone else on the Stars, that just Mike Riley having gone through that, and doing the Europe stuff and doing the the spring league, and it's like when you go. I'm not to keep talking reality TV, but people that play Survivor once, if you go back, you're going to play it much better the second time, because you kind of know how everything works. And I think, for example, Bob Stoops coming in, we'll be curious, this isn't the Brahmas deep dive, but Hines Ward here, what does that look like here as not only a head coach, but now we're in the spring league and we're trying to figure out, it's a little bit more of a startup. I mean, I'm sure you've heard stories, and I have, about staff and kind of people trying to get everything up right now. It's a little bit startup mentality if you're not used to that, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is a lot of these guys have no previous experience in spring football leagues when they come to this, and they're coming straight out of high level college football programs, or they're coming out of NFL programs. And it's a totally different world, and it's kind of a culture shock. And we don't say that with any disrespect to the spring football world, but when you're working with literally billions of dollars with the NFL or NCAA for that matter, and then you come into spring football leagues, which are literally counting their millions total for the league, it's a totally different world. So, I mean, I think there's a large adaptation period there. And I think the staffs that have leaned very heavily on the guys that have been here and done that before are going to see early success, much like the USFL in 2022.
Have you been impressed now that we're in I think padded practices or whatever, real practices are coming up. We're kind of doing some walkthroughs and stuff. Just the quality, good or bad stuff you've seen coming out of training camp, better, worse than you would expect? In terms of video footage and people posting stuff. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I like it a lot. In fact, I think we're getting quite a bit of information. It seemed like the USFL was lacking a little bit in that department last season. It was we knew they were in training camp, and we'd get occasional posts from a player here or there, but it seems like it's been a pretty steady flow. And I think that's, attributed to the fact that each one of these teams has social media directors for themselves. So, each team has somebody that's probably got boots on the ground, to steal a Mark Perry phrase there. But it's, they're able to have a lot better insight to each roster and each team, which I think is super important when you're building a fan base, because if you're a Vegas Vipers fan, you go look it up right now and you'll see videos of Brian Scott, Martavis Bryant, and Vic Beasley, and, multiple pictures upon pictures upon pictures. So, I mean, that's what we were hoping for, is these rollouts of media friendly material for fans.
It seems like with Brian, with Martavis, I've seen, like you said, some of these videos, they're selected a little bit of the faces right now. At least it's easy. You kind of used to talking on camera and stuff. Do you like that? We're a spring league. We need to get enough like recognizable people. Like, are these big enough? Are we doing enough to entice? Like, if you're a casual viewer in Vegas or somewhere on the West Coast, like, oh yeah, this is someone I'm going to be excited about.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the reasoning, but I also think that when you look on the flip side of that, if you look at the people who they're filming these videos with, a lot of these guys were probably present in, Arlington when the draft happened, because a lot of these guys are bigger names and they probably knew they were getting selected. Brian Scott, we knew, was out in Arlington with, training with Jordan Palmer for a while. And as well as, guys like Martavis Bryant, I'm sure we're out there as well. We never heard about him, but I'm sure these bigger names were prepared to be in the XFL. So that's probably why we see them as well. A lot of these other guys are, they're in other states, other cities that they still need to travel to training camp. So that's something to factor in as well.
In terms of XFL v USFL, we saw, I think it was 9 players today opt back to go to the USFL. Obviously, players jumping back and forth. What do we attribute that to? XFL has too many people on the roster. I don't have a spot. Hey, USFL is paying more now. That looks great. Hey, maybe USFL is paying me to come back if I'm someone like Shane Stribling or whatever. Like, I want to go back. Like, what are you attributing to this back and forth? Because it seems like anytime someone signs one or another online, it's like, oh my, like it's like the Monday Night Wars. Like, oh, okay, this is the Wolfpack's music comes out. Like, oh, they're back with WCW now.
I love that. Yeah, that's basically exactly how I felt as well when it comes to this. I mean, it seems like each league is taking a jab. And again, if you ask the people in either league, they're not concerned with each other, supposedly. But it seems like each announcement, there's an announcement from the other league. And the timing of stuff seems awfully coincidental if they're not concerned with each other. But with that being said, I think that, yeah, the USFL has been able to get a couple guys away from the XFL, which I think a lot of us were not expecting. But what I'm coming to find out is a lot of these are, like you said, they're based on the fact that the rosters are bigger in the XFL. Maybe a guy who was a starter in the USFL was drafted in the 3rd or 4th round or 5th round, or they're the 3rd string guy when they look at things, and they don't want to go through that battle, and they'd rather go back to the USFL where they know they're going to be a starter. I mean, just for instance, Reggie Corbin, I'm sure that's what led into his decision. Same thing with Dexter Williams, who was, I think, the 4th back drafted by Arlington when he decided to re-sign with Philly. So there's a lot of decisions to be made here. But with that, I think we've probably seen all the USFL players jump back to the XFL that we're going to see at this point, or vice versa. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it gets to a point here where it's like, you're in camp. And the math would work out if you're someone and you're like, okay, am I starting all these games in the XFL? Am I going to be sitting inactive? Okay, I can be on the USFL. The base salary is higher. A lot of the XFL salary benefits are you have to play and you have to win. And you can, I can't even remember we have the spreadsheet, and that video is doing quite well if you're interested. Like Andy and I did the full breakdown of like exactly how much you would make. But if you're the base level does say, hey, if I'm not sure where I'm going to fit in USFL, I can at least know I'm going to hit this, this base level and kind of ride that out for the season.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why some players are picking the USFL. It's kind of the same reason why some people pick commission jobs over salary. I mean, I can make X amount if I do this, well, I might want to go make that X amount versus, well, I'm okay making my $5,300 every week and knowing that I'm going to make that every week. And I think that's a big reason why the USFL got away from win bonuses, except for in the championship where it's a rather large win bonus. And I think that was kind of it played into their hand, because now it looks like they're paying more than they are, when in reality, this money was there last year. It was just there for the winning team only.
Yeah, and and there's a lot. I've been maligned both ways, and I was a big XFL hater back before, and now I'm the big USFL hater. To me, I like the most. I'm happy that USFL and XFL are both paying, because I want these CFL people to pay attention. I mean, if you want to know where Reed's loyalties really lie, like, I don't like that where the CFL people are poo-pooing on, these spring leagues and how many times are they going to fail. Like, so if USFL wants to keep rolling along year 3, 4, 5 and be paying enough to, hey, have these coaches and staff paying attention, and I have to, ask the commissioner about, hey, what do you think about these spring leagues? The commissioner of the CFL, like that, to me, I'm happy regardless. If you want to know where USFL gets to win in my book, it is creating this competitive landscape in America. I don't care whatever league you're in. It gives some respect in that regard, right?
Absolutely. So I think that's a big thing that the CFL is going to have to garner with over the next couple of seasons. If USFL makes it to season 3, I'd be willing to bet that there is some sort of agreement to up the pay over the next couple of years as well. I haven't broken down the CBA that closely. You would know a lot better than I would. But, either way, I think these leagues are going to continue to grow and continue to pay more and more. And that's going to be something that the CFL is going to have to contend with. The CFL lives and dies on their American talent. And if they start losing a lot of that American talent to these leagues, they're going to have to take notice, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, if you're either a USFL or an XFL, and God, we're fighting in these wars. Just imagine the whole country of Canada is basically like neither of these mean anything. Like, not really. I mean, I know we have listeners both sides, but it is getting very contentious, and that's, to me, if nothing else, USFL and Fox is at least giving respect in this regard, which I think that these players and coaches and the people that are trying to put all this together deserve. Anything else? This time has flown by. I'm looking at Maathuis Sexton here for the Vipers. That's exciting. Going back through the list here. Anyone else standing out? Just before I let you go here, kind of doing our little training camp preview. I'm sure we'll get you back on here talking Vipers or anything else, but before I let you go today.
The main thing that really stuck out to me was I really like Wes Bowers. He's a solid pass rusher. That's somebody you want to watch, as well as Destiny Bejo. I hope I pronounced that last name right. Former Eagles player, so I know him quite well, but he's a longtime NFL veteran. I think he spent 5 years in the NFL. So another guy that is going to ring some bells for some fans out there, and another guy that's probably going to be a pretty solid player in the XFL this season. Yeah, and I'm just scrolling down here.
Juwan Johnson as well here. I think he's a big social media follower of all, kind of everyone doing around that way. It's cool to see, like I said, nothing else, getting these guys a shot. I think it's going to be exciting. We'll see how cut downs go and all that stuff. But, Rob Woodson here assembled a good crew. I think he comes across as a really good leader of men. He was at the Arizona Showcase when we talked with him. Any other final thoughts on the Viper staff? Anything else? Oh, we see Michael Carrizosa here, San Jose. He was famously the Michigan punter that had to kick the field goal that lost the game for that. But glad to see him back in his preferred role as a punter here.
Absolutely. And Bailey Giffen is a pretty solid kicker as well. I've connected with him. Nice guy. I'll have a article coming out pretty soon about the ties from Vegas to the areas around their state. So I think one thing that Vegas did really well is a lot of these guys are from Utah, they're from Colorado, they're from Arizona, they're from Texas, they're from UNLV, they're from, the Vegas Nighthawks of the IFL. So a lot of these guys are tied to areas around their market, which I think, whether by accident or on purpose, was a very intelligent move. And I think it's something that's going to ultimately benefit fans, because a lot of these guys are going to be like, well, who would I want to follow in the XFL? I don't have a team in my state. Oh, well, this player that I watched at, Utah plays for the Vegas Vipers, so I'm going to go follow the Vipers. So I think that's something that definitely can't be overstated this offseason as well.
Yeah, I didn't really live through the AAF, but I know they kind of did that territorial draft stuff, and I always thought that seems like a good idea. Like if you're into, I am not a college like I don't know any of that stuff at all. I went to Gonzaga University. We didn't have college football, but I think that is good if you were someone that's diehard with that. Sam, really appreciate it. Sam puts in tons of work. Sam Shady Sports on YouTube, and you have the website, and you're always posting, and I see you in all the groups and stuff. From NFL stuff to alt football stuff. Really impressed with the quality of work that you and you have other people writing stuff, and I mean it's a huge thing, and I really appreciate your voice and work that you do, because we both know this is not easy. So
definitely, it's not, and I got to be honest, man. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for Mike Mitchell, Andy Paul Murray, Pat, Matt Lyons, all these guys from the News Hub family, and the guys that are in our little text group and stuff that have basically helped me learn this whole world that I had no previous knowledge about, have been instrumental. So thank you to all of you guys. I know I've told you off camera, but just let me take an opportunity to tell everybody in the world that I really, really appreciate everything you guys have done for me. And I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for all of you.
Let's say just appreciate it. A little Vegas, a little meandering. We got a little USFL in here as well, but that doesn't hurt. Appreciate your time. We'll get you back here soon.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
Well, I don't have any Raiders gear, but I do have my Chris Angel Mind Freak sweatshirt that I got last time I was in Vegas. We have Chris Maathuis here, CBS down in Vegas. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yeah, so I'm looking at your bio on the website. I am seeing a lot of XFL ads to buy tickets that went on sale today. So that is good. I think it's targeted for a Seattle demographic, but at least the ads are on the website. That's good.
Yeah, you know what? I think fans are, especially here in Las Vegas. When the XFL was here before with He Hate Me and that group, and it was played out at Sam Boyd Stadium where UNLV played, it was just kind of a different feel. Obviously, we didn't have the Raiders. We didn't have an indoor football league team at the time. But one of the big cities and markets in that first launch of the XFL with McMahon, when he came into Las Vegas, and that's at midfield, he yells, "This is the XFL." I mean, Vegas really, they embraced the XFL back then. So I'll be interested to see now with the Raiders here, with the Nighthawks, the indoor football league team here, if the XFL and the Vipers, what kind of crowd will show up. They're playing at Cashman Field, which, to be quite honest, isn't the greatest of all places. I'm sure that wasn't their first choice, but they kind of ran out of choices. It's almost like they put the cart before the horse, because they said, we're coming to Vegas. And then it's like, oh, shoot, where are we going to play? So they had a couple of spots that they really were trying to narrow it down to. And Allegiant Stadium didn't want them. That would have been too cost prohibitive. But anyway, I think they were really hoping on playing at the Las Vegas ballpark where the Aviators play. Brand new facility, great facilities. It's as nice as any Major League Baseball park. It's got all the amenities and everything out there. It just doesn't have the seating capacity of a Major League park. But behind the scenes, it is really, really nice. I think they kind of banked on the fact that they would be able to play there, but the A's and baseball said, no, we don't want you out here. So then they really started scrambling, and it came down to Gorman High School, which is it's a real nice facility, but it is a high school. It came down to Gorman High School, which seats probably about 5,000 max. And quite frankly, they didn't really want it either, or Cashman Field. And they kind of worked back and forth, and it ends up being at Cashman Field, which is downtown where the Las Vegas Lights FC plays. So that's kind of the background to how all that came about.
Yeah, and I got some follow-up questions here. I don't know if you've been following the Vince McMahon saga the last couple of weeks. I will tell you, it's probably a good thing the XFL is not currently involved in anything to do with Vince McMahon, if you've tracked any of that. Backtrack here. First off, you hear XFL coming back to Vegas. Good idea, bad idea? What do you think?
I don't think it's a good idea. In my opinion, they should go to a place like Salt Lake or Boise if they really want a place out west that could possibly be hungry for something like this. Now, Vegas is the cachet market. We talked to the commissioner, the owner, actually, Dwayne Johnson, and he said that right from the start, they wanted Vegas to be part of this thing. So I guess that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. But I just don't know if it's going to be a good idea, to be honest with you.
And leading towards you feeling that way is what?
I just think there's too much now. Now, will fans say, you know what? I'll go back to the football field again. I just got done paying a bunch of money for these Raiders tickets. Went to the games. Now, am I going to go back to Cashman Field downtown, where it's kind of tough to get in and out? It's not the most desirable place, so I want to bring my kids down there and watch some football. Price points are going to be a big deal. I mean, that's a big deal right off the bat. I don't know what the promotions are going to be, if we can get a family in there for a decent price, but just are they going to want more football? Am I going to want to go see the Nighthawks, the indoor football league team here? I'll be really interested to see how many people they get on that February 25th home opener out there at Cashman. And that might tell. Now I know the owner of the FC Lions and the guy who leases that land and that facility from the city, and he's kind of hoping the XFL has been telling him they're going to get 8,000 a game. Now that if they got that, that'd be pretty big. I'd be surprised if they got that, but that's kind of what they're hoping.
Have you, because that is the concern with, anything that's not Allegiant, right? Everyone was talking Sam Boyd forever. That was off the market, but the capacity was always the big issue because, like here in Seattle, I mean, they were drawing 23,000 right back in 2020. So the presumption is 8,000 would be a low ceiling that they would like to be able to succeed. Have you heard any thoughts of adding capacity there? People have been looking at diagrams and you can add benches over here. Any construction happening at Cashman?
No construction right now, but I did talk to we had him on just last week on our sports wrap show on a Sunday, and he was talking about there is talk, if they need it, to put some bleachers out in right field, because they play soccer there now, so they could put a bunch of bleachers out in right field and up the capacity if they really needed that. But I'm kind of thinking right now they're going to play it and see what happens with this first game. Now he's putting all new grass out there, so he's spending $25,000 of his own money to reseed that whole thing and put turf out there and make it look really nice and green, because right now it's all brown. So they're in the process of doing that. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to need those extra seats right away. We'll see if that demand and that need comes up a little bit later. But right now they don't need to. But they could on that east side, the right field out there next to the pitch.
I heard the issues with Cashman was more kind of behind the scenes, where like the locker rooms weren't up to snuff and facilities to shower and things like that. Is that where Bishop Gorman? Okay, you have the stigma, we're playing at a high school, but hey, we can shower here and have locker. Was that kind of the issue?
That is the issue. There's not a lot of room out there for a football team. I'm going to be really interested to see how all this works with the XFL. Cashman is an old facility. It hasn't been upgraded. There's the plumbing leaks out there. They've had some issues with that. It's just an old facility that needs a major overhaul if they want to do something big out there. Now they can make it work this year, and they're going to put temporary, lockers out there and get by this season. But if it's a long-term deal, they really got to make some changes.
Well, and I think it was because we had shared your story. It was right before they came out with the schedule last week, where this does seem like it's a multi-year, hey, we're going to be here for a little while, right? Is that your understanding?
Well, he's got a 3-year lease with them. So, and he said he got paid up front. So Brett Lashbrook was smart to say, okay, if you want to come out here, I need this, this, and this. And oh, by the way, I want to get my money first before anything happens. Who knows how long this league is going to last? Now, of course, you hope it lasts, but we'll see. But he's got a 3-year lease. So after that, maybe they renegotiate, do some different things and make it work out there. It's just the location. It's kind of a shame too, because it's at one time it was really nice, right downtown. You can see the city lights, but that whole area around there just isn't the most ideal of places, which, anybody will admit that who lives in Las Vegas. Now, Brett Lashbrook, the owner of the Lights, won't say that, but he knows that it's a challenge to get people to that area. If the product's good, if they like it, they have fun, then people do make a way. Just like when the Golden Knights came to Las Vegas for the first year, everybody was complaining, how are we going to it's right on the strip. There's going to be no parking. It's going to be a pain. We don't want to go. Well, people, they find a way to get there. People will find a way to get to the XFL Vipers games if they really want to go and they have fun. It's a good product and the price points are okay. So all that stuff's going to factor in. I'm really curious to see what happens on February 25th.
In terms of, and you might not know this, just curious, what does it cost to lease time at that stadium for 3 years and pay it up front? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. He would, although I did ask, he would divulge those numbers to me, but he got a good deal. They went back and forth because the XFL was kind of running out of time. So the Gorman people called me one week and said, Chris, looks like we're done. We just got to sign the papers. Don't release the information yet because we haven't quite signed it, but I promised you I'd call you when we had a deal worked out. So they had the deal worked out over at Gorman. Well, the next thing I know, a week later, I call Brett and say, hey, Brett, looks like it's going to be Gorman. Wait a sec. They were just at my place yesterday, and looks like we're going to work out a deal. So I think they went back and forth and decided, you know what, we can't play at a high school. The optics just aren't what it should be for the XFL. So then they went to Gorman. They'll spruce it up, make it look nice, put some banners up there, and it'll be okay. We'll see what happens. It's just a shame, the location.
A couple last questions. So how... I believe it was you had reported, and I had seen, I think it was Mick Akers. I think he's another reporter down there with the Business Journal in Vegas. Like the night before the schedule came out, they had finally kind of signed it. Like, do you know how late this all came together?
It came probably around 4 o'clock that afternoon, maybe 5, because I called him after the 6 o'clock news. So we just got the deal done, Chris, and here's what it is, and this is what it's going to part. This is what I'm into it. This is what I got to do. This is what they got to do. I mean, they were sticklers too. They were saying we need new lights. No, you don't. We play soccer here. So the owner of the FC Lights was pretty shrewd and not just giving in to whatever the XFL wanted, because he knew they were kind of under the gun and needed some pressure to find a place to play. So he worked out a good deal for himself as well.
So I worked in local news before my whole life here. So I've sat in, production meetings, and I was with the Fox station up here when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl and all that. It was very exciting. Like, does the Vegas Vipers, now that like Gorman, I mean, obviously this was kind of outside of a normal covering a football league, like Vegas Vipers, any sort of pulse at all right now in terms of like the newsroom, your producers saying like, hey, we got to get coverage on this or anything going on?
No, not right now. We'll see what happens. I mean, Woodson's a nice draw, though, as the coach with the Raiders connection. So at least they got that for him, which is going to be nice. I mean, if they called right now and said, hey, we can, bring by a coach, bring by a player, do whatever, I'd say, sure, and we'll put him on. And we have a Sunday night show. We'd be willing to give a bunch of time to him that way. But there's no real buzz right now. Now there could be. That could change. And if they get on a little winning streak and people get going, there's maybe a few names on the roster that people might get excited about. And like I say, the coach, obviously, having Woodson was a big deal. So that's at least a couple of steps head start before the season starts to get word out there. But I'm interested to see. Now I know that all the players and the teams all work out in Texas. Then they go play their games wherever their games. They go back to Texas and work. So there's not going to be that hometown connection and bring the guy by on a Wednesday to talk to the, we're not going to be able to really get into the background stories of these players and what they're all about and how they like Vegas, because they're just going to play in Vegas and leave. So unfortunately, that's the case in the XFL, that we won't have an opportunity to get to know those human interest stories, those interesting stories, their football backgrounds, because they're not going to be here except for a game and then leave. So unfortunately, that's the case around the entire league, not just in Vegas, but that's one of the drawbacks. And who knows what happens if they change that later on? I don't know. But right now, there's not really that buzz that you would think with a professional franchise and new football league rolling into Las Vegas. Not like there was way back in the day with He Hate Me in that first league. There was a buzz. Now we didn't have the Raiders, what we have now on the Knights, and it's totally changed. But there was a buzz back then, and maybe some of those fans, catch on. It's cheaper. The Raiders games are expensive, no doubt. So maybe they can go to these games, have some fun, enjoy football. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is football. So if they want to go have some fun, watch some football, there you go.
Well, I appreciate it. Any other last tidbits of the deal? Anything else? I just like to get, just the Vegas, we're not there, and kind of what all this transpires and your thoughts on it, but also the deal, really interesting, just the tidbits with the timeline and the negotiations with the lease and all that. Any other tidbits before I let you go?
I can't really think of anything. I know they're going to put some new grass down. They're going to get the goalpost lights. I mean, they're going to try to make it, fan friendly and entertaining, and at least, hey, this is where your Vipers play. This is what they're going to call home. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe we can get together, Reed, in a 2 months, and we'll talk again after the first game and kind of see how the atmosphere was and what it was like, and as we talk to some people and see what the general feel is here. But for right now, it's kind of wait and see.
I lied. Last question. The lights pushing back their home opener to be able to facilitate that, right, with the XFL playing.
Yep.
Was that more like field conditions, or was that more just timeline, giving them to be able to set up space, or what was the thought process?
Yeah, it was just strictly timeline. They had the XFL, so now we're going to push our home date back to Cinco de Mayo in May. Just basically giving way to the XFL. So you got this. This is yours. I'll push my soccer schedule back to accommodate all that you need here. So he's done all that he needs to do. So now the Vipers need to go out and win a couple of games and get going here on a little roll.
Well, you got a good quarterback going there, Brian Scott, friend of the show. So it should be good. I appreciate it, Chris, your time here. And I know that local news and busy and running around and stuff. So I really appreciate you hopping on. It means a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And maybe we can talk again.
Thanks. Well, I'm excited here. We have Liam Blutman here with the Transfer Portal CFB. Sir, how are you doing? We're talking all things XFL broadcasters today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, excited to talk about XFL broadcasting, even though I don't know much about the XFL at all.
That's okay. Yeah, we're converting new fans. We'll get Liam on board here with the XFL. But, they announced these people. It's a lot of college analysts. It's a lot of people involved in that, getting your thoughts. Because when we put out the news yesterday or 2 days ago as this episode airs, okay, who are these people? What's going on? You claim that you watch more college football than anybody, so you are a good person to talk to about this, I feel.
Yeah, it might not even be a claim. It might just be the straight up truth. Oh, man. I don't know who you want to hear about.
Well, let's start here. So first and foremost, we have some returnees from the 2020 season that called XFL 2020. We have Tom Hart, Greg McElroy, Cole Kubelik, Joey Galloway, and then Tom Luganbill. And Tom's interesting because he was actually a coach, or he called the 2020, and then he was a quarterbacks coach back for the 01 LA Extreme for the original XFL. Any of the returnees stand out to you of those, I guess, 5 that we labeled?
Well, Cole Kubelik, I think he's like an elite guy for this role and everything. I think he does a stellar job with college football games. What you're going to get from him, a lot of talk about the trenches and the offensive line play on his Twitter account. It's going to be littered with tweets and videos of just what's going down the trenches. And I think he does a very good job of analyzing that for whether you're like a casual knower of the game or a diehard. I think he does a really good job of catering to all sorts of fans, and he's just fun. He's just straight up fun. There's a bunch of college football broadcasts where you'll see him housing down a donut hamburger, whatever that is. He was enjoying that a bunch. I don't know. He's just super fun. I like Cole a lot.
Cole, Tom Luganbill is someone that stands out to you. He even tweeted yesterday, this is like my 3rd time go around here. Like I said, to be related, his dad coached back in XFL 2020 as well, or 2001 as well with the LA Extreme. Thoughts on Tom?
Yeah, I think Tom's very good too. I know he brings a lot of knowledge to the recruiting game, which is not necessary for the XFL or anything, but he's another bright mind that does a really good job at field analysis and evaluating what's going on during the game and just knowing how to bring that to the table in the broadcast and educate the fan. I think Luganbill does an excellent job. I think like a lot of the guys and girls that they hired are just fantastic at what they do. And I'm sure XFL fans are going to love them.
So overall thoughts, you feel like this is a strong class of guys and girls signed up?
Yeah, like Tom Hart is a very good commentator. Stormy Bonatoni, we had her on our podcast. I think she's an excellent piece. I think, in the whole broadcasting scheme of things, I think she's a very underrated talent. I'm sure that she'll just thrive in this role and continue to showcase her skill set. She was really good with the Golden Knights a few years ago when she was like the first on ice reporter or whatever when the Knights became a franchise. I think she'll be really good in the XFL.
Is there certain aspects to being a college broadcaster that more strengths or weaknesses compared to an NFL broadcaster?
I guess it really just depends on the broadcast crew, right? Because some of them are going to look to just be more serious and everything. But I think what makes college football broadcasts so good is when it's not, there's so many games, and you're just not going to be able to sell the audience on, I don't know, let's say like Kentucky Vanderbilt one week. So it's about like Tom Hart and Cole Kubelik and whatever, like coming up with ideas to get the audience to stay. And that's just stuff that they do very well naturally. And it's just those fun things that they could do that, you know, because like on College Football Saturday, the Twitter feeds are just filled with content from these games. And it's not just the games, it's the broadcast. Like I run the No Context College Football account. I have more fun getting broadcast clips half the time than I do actually getting clips from games. So if you're able to just, I don't know, if the XFL audience is like full of sickos enthusiasts, like I think it might be, then that's probably something where these broadcast crews should cater to.
But you're saying too, it also helps where if you do have people, you know, because I think with the XFL you get two extremes. You get people that have followed and watch all these spring leagues, and I've been with the USFL and I watch, you know, CFL or do whatever. And then I think you get a lot of casual people that are like, okay, what the hell is this? Okay, I'm turning this on. I don't know any of these players. So having, you know, college broadcasters that have maybe followed a lot more of these players over the years, do you think they're going to be able to add context in that way?
I'm sure they can. I'm sure there's a lot of like fun stories that they'll be able to tell. It really depends though, like who they were watching. I looked at the rosters myself last night. Like I saw Jazz Ferguson, who was a name that I liked in the pre-draft process a few years ago. I don't know how many of those commentators are going to know a guy from Northwestern State, right? But I don't know. I'm sure that there's a decent chunk of players in the league that they'll have fun stories to share from college. I'm just not sure if that's the direction that they're heading in.
Back in 2020, it was more of a split where you had NFL broadcasters and college. You know, the NFL people, they would have to look up all these players. You think at least having some semblance of okay, I can recall this person back from 2-3 years ago.
They should be able to.
Maybe a higher level of that recall.
Oh, definitely. Like I'm still like I said, I'm not that familiar with the XFL or anything, but like I'm looking at the rosters and just what team is this? The San Antonio Brahmas, TJ Vasher, Alze Mack, Kalen Balaj, Dylan Parham. Those are just names that just right off the bat I recognize immediately. I'm thinking back to their college days. I think that should be super easy for these broadcasters.
In terms of, you know, we hit some of the returnees, like I said, Tom and Greg, everyone here, anyone standing out to you as a higher pick? The ESPN has the full slate here. There's basically going to be 4 different teams, four individuals for each team. You know, with the broadcasters, you're going to have a field analyst and a reporter. Anyone else standing out to you that way?
I think Matt Berry does a very good job as well. I'm interested if he's going to he does a lot of, you know, he's very interested into the sports betting side of things. So I'm interested to see if he's going to incorporate that into the mix. Let's see. John Schifrin, I think, is also pretty good, as is Taylor McGregor. I think she's excellent as well. Like, there's a lot of quality pieces that they've got, truly.
You think like I said, the feedback we got, casual fans, okay, who are these people? Regardless of whether or not you know them, you think they're going to be adding into the broadcast in terms of the skill level they're bringing?
Yeah, I definitely do. Tiffany Blackman's another one that I think does a very good job. She has like more of the low-key college football games that maybe not everyone's watching. I think that she'll do an excellent job with the XFL, and just, again, it's just knowing your audience is just so pivotal. And I think that most of the names on here recognize that, and they'll know, you know, what to I don't know what phrase I'm looking for, but they'll know where to cater to, right? I think that was fun.
In terms of, you know, the XFL, USFL, these spring leagues, more of a developmental, right? We're getting these players up, kind of they're working through the ranks. You'll see that as well on the broadcast, right? Where some of these, they're letting some of these people come in and get shots. Do you see people, on these lineups being able to kind of elevate themselves up to the next level here in terms of getting more higher profile? They go back to college or whatever. Maybe they want to do NFL stuff, or you see these people being able to springboard?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Stormy Bonatoni, I think like she could end up being the star of the group, maybe. I don't know, or like a rising star, essentially. I truly believe that she is an amazing on-field, sideline reporter. She does a really good job, asks very smart questions, and has done that since her time with the Golden Knights. Then when she was doing college football these last 2 years, she was working on she was on a really good crew like last year, and then got kind of bumped down for this season, which I was surprised by. And she still did a fantastic job. So I'm sure, I truly believe that XFL fans will love her. Another one, Tom Hart, I think he really does a very good job of calling games. I forget which bowl game he was calling, but I had a lot of fun listening to him. I wish I remembered which one.
In terms of any less appealing, I guess on here on Longhorn Twitter, I have a note. There's a lot of hate for Lowell Galindo. Well, like you said, Tom Hart, Greg McElroy, and Cole seem to be pretty well liked. Any of these broadcasters maybe more of, heel role or people aren't as high on?
I can't speak to Lowell. I don't know too much about him, but Joey Galloway, I think, could rub people the wrong way. Man, I don't want to be mean or anything, but it just feels like a lot of the time there's not much substance to what he's saying, and there's not I don't know, just a lot of wasted words, and then just lack of actual analysis. It doesn't. I know a few of my friends in the last few college football seasons will always be like, "What is he talking about? That's not true at all," or "Where do you get this fact from?" What is going on? So I'm hesitant to I don't want to be mean or anything, but Joey's not one of my favorites. Yeah, I don't know. And he doesn't give out the best picks when him and Matt Berry give out college football bets. Joey struggled a lot, unfortunately.
In terms of spring football as a whole, are you mostly college focused? Do you watch any spring football?
When I was I guess I could say younger, but a few years ago, I was pretty into it. And then after a few weeks, I was just whatever. I just Stanley Cup playoffs are starting up. Let me lock in on that. But I don't know, I'll try and watch a few and I'll see if I stick around. Like I kind of alluded to earlier, what will bring me there is all the names I recognize from college football and guys that I was rooting for in the pre-draft process and just wanting to see them succeed and maybe, a miracle of sorts, get back on that journey to the NFL. So I am very excited to see those guys and see if they could carve the path back to the NFL.
It's interesting because I've interviewed people on here, and it's we're so high, we're following these guys through the draft, and we're doing all these things in college football, and it's once they go to the NFL or they don't make it, then it's okay, you're dead to me now. We don't. It's always interesting to me the draw that it has for some spring football fans, and then others, it's I don't care anymore now. They're not. It's but you follow these guys for the last 3 years. What is, what I mean? What is? But do you find that in circles that you talk to and the other people you work with?
I think that's just so trash to just kind of throw away that you were rooting for this player. Because look, if the player were to make it big and they got that NFL opportunity, what's that fan saying? That they were their number one fan, supporting them for however long, and they were always with them. Why can't we keep the same energy? You should be rooting for Katie Cannon, right? Who was a stud at Baylor, to just revitalize his career, and maybe he could turn into something and really get back to the NFL. Or Jaquez Eddard, who had a pretty strong pre-draft process but never found that NFL opportunity. He's someone that I was rooting for. I can't wait to see if him and Jazz Ferguson, two guys I like, are able to just thrive in this league. we saw Taylor Heineke make it out of nowhere and get to the NFL and ball out. It could be any one of these guys could be that next Heineke, essentially, and people should always be rooting for them. They shouldn't stop because they're playing in the XFL. That's not right. There's so many talented players in this league, and not everyone gets the opportunity that they deserve.
Just looking here for these commentators, you think there's a good enough mix between, getting young voices, older voices, male, female, different ethnicities? I always like to see kind of a blend of, we have a lot of different opinions here and a lot of different voices. Do you think they did a good enough job kind of filling out, all sides of that?
Yeah, I suppose that they did. Looking at it, it seems like they definitely did. I don't know. There's a lot of really quality pieces that they've got. I'm excited to see how each broadcast crew meshes together.
Do you like that the XFL does more of the sideline interview stuff? I mean, I know that's been taken up now, obviously, since the XFL back in 2020, but getting more of those on field and we're getting the immediate reaction and all of that?
100%. That was one of the first things that I feel like attracted me to watching the XFL in the first place was, like you flip on TV or whatever and you're not really locked in, and then you're seeing a in-game interview like on the sideline while the game is going on. Like, that's sick. That's not something that you're ever getting to see, and that's like quality insight that you're getting that nobody else is really giving you.
Before I let you go, you watch a lot of college, XFL, spring football, they kind of use it, right? This is a testing ground. We can do a bunch of different stuff. Any other broadcasts, like ideas or, things that you would like to see tried that maybe, okay, we don't want to do on the college level yet, or we want to, anything you would like to see them experiment with?
Give me a few seconds to think of something here. Let's see. I think it would be, okay, this just popped in my head and would never happen in college football, especially not the NFL. Maybe low tier college football. But what if, this might sound really, really idiotic. What if they just pick some random fan, they just whatever seat they're in, they just pick out the ticket, and that fan gets to go up and call a series. Just what, like in the fourth quarter, if the game's a blowout. I don't know why that popped into my head, but that'd be kind of funny.
Well, there you go. Well, Liam, I appreciate it. I hope you'll at least try out a couple weeks of the XFL here with the new broadcast teams and everything else. Should be fun. February. Anything else before I let you go?
Nope. It's going to be a long college football off season, so I will definitely check out the XFL, hopefully stick around. But yes, very, very hyped to see how these broadcasters do, because again, there's a lot of very, very good ones that might not get that recognition like so many other great ones do.
Awesome. Liam with the Transfer Portal CFB, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
A huge special thanks to all of my guests this week, everyone hopping on, even some last minute people here. Liam, talking the XFL ESPN broadcasters. Huge shout out to Lucas and everyone over at the CFL offices for helping to facilitate all of my interviews this week that we did for the CFL Media Day. That's certainly not something that needs to be done here. Helping the American XFL broadcaster do a bunch of remote interviews. I saw, it's probably still friend of me of the show, enemy of the show, Justin Dunk. He had this big Cush setup up there in Alberta. Well, we did it all remote. I appreciate all the, helping to facilitate all of that. Matt and Sam both coming on, wonderful writers doing lots of work over at XFL News Hub. Really appreciate them doing the deep dive roster stuff, everything else we talked about today with Matt and Sam. Really appreciate Chris Maathuis for coming on. I like getting the insider stuff about people in Vegas, or we had Carlos come on in San Antonio, and Jake over in DC. I like getting the local reporter perspective that way, and then of course Liam for coming on as well, the broadcaster breakdown. Like I said, lots of CFL stuff coming up. It's either going to be a big dump next week, depending. I've been emailing a lot of the XFL team reps, trying to set up a bunch of that stuff as well. Really blessed. The XFL, providing myself and a lot of other people, opportunities to interview and talk, in training camp with all of that stuff. It really feels like a real football league there. So I certainly appreciate that. Been making lots of connections that way. So we'll see kind of what we get. Going to have another team training camp kind of preview breakdown next week, talking the Renegades with Anthony Miller, I think is the plan. Victor Cui, we'll see when we air that episode. We're backlogged right now. Like, who would have thought so much CFL content coming your way? And of course, the XFL as well. Like and subscribe, get your football here. I want to get this off my hands. Jumping up, lots of subscribers. A lot of our old videos now talking like the USFL and XFL pay, who's paying more, that video shooting up. Some of the content is kind of day-to-day, time-specific, and then some of it's a little more evergreen. So you ever miss any of those episodes, go back and check it out. But thank you guys all so much. Ton of work scheduling all of this. I will be out of town next week, so probably recording stuff, editing remotely, figuring out all of that stuff. So, work of love here. Always appreciate that. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.